I mean, yeah, it's scary the first few times, but honestly, aren't all new jobs? You don't know any of your coworkers yet, and you don't fully know all the rules yet, so there's always this lingering fear of when you'll mess up and get fired. Believe me, those fears came with me when I started, but as time went on, the only fears I have now are when literal demons check in for a vacation. I guess I should give a bit of background before I start, huh? Last year, I got hired at a hotel somewhere in bumfuck Canada, which in itself is shocking because there's no place in Canada that's unknown. Yet, here I am, I guess. Don't get me wrong, I love the place. The Cobra chickens I could live without, but everything else is great. However, the downside of the hotel I work at is that because of our location, we don't get any human visitors. Which brings me back to getting demons visiting us for vacation. Before they're able to even book a room, the owner has a contract they need to sign. Basically saying they can't do any funny business, for lack of better words. So it's rather funny when you get the chance to see demons meeting up after centuries because Mammon and Beelzebub are still having their little feud over something so silly no one can remember. I don't think the owner is human, and if he is, he's really strong spiritually. I mean, making contracts for demons that they willingly follow? Probably not unheard of, but definitely rare. However, I have seen him with fire orange skin when a guest disobeyed the rules, so he's definitely not fully a human. Plus, in my year of working here, I've never heard anyone say his name, so we all just call him the owner. He doesn't really seem to mind. When I was in high school, I had a fun time where I hyperfixated on many old folktales of ghosts and other spirits, both the harmful ones and the mischievous ones. Whenever anyone asks me what my weirdest flex is, I have to restrain myself from replying with the selfie of Teke Teke, a poor Japanese girl that was killed by a train. How I got that is a story for another time. I think my best introduction story would be my first time alone on the job. I had been working there for 2 weeks when the owner had come to me saying that Becca, that's Bekka, yes, her name was spelt like that, wasn't able to come in, so I'd be by myself. The owner had expected me to be nervous, and was pleasantly surprised when I replied with enthusiasm. I had told him not to worry, and that seemed to please him as he left and disappeared into the night. A year later, and none of us know if he even has a house to go to or a life outside of running the hotel. After he had left, I stayed behind the desk mostly, looking through the check-ins of the day and seeing if anyone was meant to check out later that night. It was standard procedure, and I had finally managed to get the owner to buy us a computer as the old pen and book wasn't cutting it anymore. So there I sat, ready in case anyone showed up or in case any guests needed assistance. Not all ghosts are nocturnal when they're on vacation, but for the rest, old habits die hard. Luckily, there weren't many staying that night. Looking back, that's probably why the owner left me there by myself after such a short time of me working there. The first few hours went by smoothly, from 9 p.m. to midnight. Everything was going well. I had my extra coffee to give me the right amount of oomph to get me through the night. I had my phone somehow still connected to Wi-Fi, which allowed me to watch shows and movies to pass the time. One earbud in, so I could still hear everything. The owner knew night shift could be relatively boring, so this was allowed, as long as one earbud stayed out. When the clock hit midnight, that's when I heard the door open. I turned off my phone and looked to the door. There, dripping wet, was a schoolgirl, probably around 16, slowly walking to the desk. As she walked, I had plenty of time to look at her appearance. Her hair was long and damp, sticking to her face. The skin I could see was blue, and she had water surrounding her. soaking her to the metaphorical bone and dripping to the ground, which quickly dried up. When she got to the desk I was at, I gave her a smile. "Hello, how can I help you?" I asked. And she looked at me, moving some of her hair from her face and behind her ear, a brown, bloodshot eye looking back at me.
"May I please have a room for the night?"
She croaked. The sound of water in her throat was clear, and with how wet she was, it was clear that she probably died not all that long ago. Possibly a week at the least, a month at the most. But I smiled to her, getting the computer ready. "Of course. May I have your name?" I asked, preparing to type, and she seemed to look down.
"I don't remember my name."
She spoke, her voice barely above a whisper, and I frowned slightly. "Oh, that's unfortunate to hear. Would you like me to help you try and remember it?" I asked, looking to her, my offer seeming to shock her, but I continued. "If not, I'd be happy to help you make a new name for yourself. I need to put you in the database so somebody doesn't get sent to your room in the morning." I explained, and she looked about ready to cry.
"You're not just helping me because this is your job, right?"
She asked, her voice shaking as it sounded like she was on the verge of tears, and I looked at her. "Of course not. You seem like a very nice girl, and you look like you're in dire need of some warmth," I said, internally wondering what happened to her to make her that cautious of my intentions.
"Do you think you could put Sylvia in?"
"Of course, Miss Sylvia. Would you like me to put a last name in there too?" I asked, typing the name into the computer as well as her condition, as the computer loaded the best room for her. She shook her head at the thought of a surname, and I smiled. "Not to worry, I won't put one down. Now, for a single night, it'll cost you about 50 knots. Food is already included in the cost, so you won't need to worry about that." I explained, waiting for the key card for the room to show up so I could give it to her. "May I ask how you'll be paying? It doesn't have to be now, but it will have to be tonight. I can get you to your room and you can come down to pay once you're settled." I say, and she nods.
"I think I can pay now."
She said, the sound of water in her voice having died down, and she reached into her pocket and pulled out a baggie, placing it on the counter.
"I found it beside me when I had woken. It's filled with these strange black balls."
She said, and I took the bag, looking inside of it. It was hard to see, but when I took one of the balls out, I could tell they were ghost money. They weren't knots, but instead toros. Small, shiny black beads. Each toro costs as much as 5 knots. And judging by how much she had, the cost wouldn't make a dent in her savings. For those of you who don't have experience with ghost money, think Harry Potter. Galleons and toros being the most, sickles and ringos being in the middle, while nuts and knots being the most commonly used. That was my way of keeping track of the money. Everyone is different. I took 5 toros out of the bag and handed it back to her, putting the payment in, placing the beads into the register with my hand, and finally grabbing the keycard to her room. "Okay, Sylvia, if you follow me now, I'll take you up to your room, all right?" I asked, looking to her, and she nodded. I came out from behind the desk, putting up the sign that I would be right back, and led Sylvia to the elevators. When I knew she was on, I swiped her card onto the pad, and we started moving. Make sure to keep your card safe, all right? It brings you directly to your room and your room only. I explained as we moved, and she looked to me, having to continuously move hair out of her face. You'll be perfectly safe in your room. However, if you need me at any time, there's a phone you can use to call me at the front desk. You tell me what you need and I'll be up as fast as I can. I say, and she nodded. It didn't take long for the doors to open and her room to be in front of us. She seemed a bit hesitant, looking to me, then gave me a hug. I could hear her softly crying. Despite being soaking wet, the only thing that left wet stains were her tears as she thanked me. I patted her head while telling her, "You're welcome," over and over, urging her into her room until she finally calmed down and went in, waving to me as the door closed. It didn't take too long for me to be back at my desk, and for the night to remain uneventful. Sylvia only called once to ask about being able to use the bed, which I told her she could. She had paid for it, so she was more than welcome to use the bed, which seemed to make her happy as she thanked me and hung up, seeming to go to sleep. And by 5:45 a.m., the owner returned, tipping his hat to me. "Slow night?" he asked, and I shook my head. We had one last-minute check-in. Her name was Sylvia. I'd say around 16 years of age, possibly died by drowning. Paid with Toro she said she woke up with. I explained, and the owner seemed to nod. "I'll go check on her when she's awake. You may go home now," he said, and I thanked him, going to the staff room and gathering my things, clocking out. After that, Sylvia became a regular. The owner had hired her as the new baker, after the old one had gone missing. I didn't know much about it at the time. In fact, even now, I still don't know much. But I do know now that Sylvia is doing mighty fine here, and I'm very proud of her. We've practically become friends. 2 weeks marks the day she checked in, and everyone jokes about how she never checked out, changing their voices like one of those cheesy campfire stories, which gave everyone a good laugh. I have many other stories, and I'm sure I'll be getting more as I continue to work here, so I'm really looking forward to being able to share everything that happens. The owner gave me full permission, so I'm not breaking any rules by doing this. Have a great night, y'all.